well. I love it when I find someone who can talk at it from a business perspective as a CEO, but also has a technical prowess about him as well. He's actually built AI tools as well. So I'm really looking forward to this talk from Tom. So Tom, perhaps just give us a little bit of a introduction to yourself, and then I'll start the question after that point. So over to you, Tom.
Sure. Thank you, and thanks a lot for having me today, Jan and Paul, and everyone. Very happy to see you all here. I'll try to make sure that we get to that one insight which helps you, but that's hopefully also a little bit up to you. So yeah, I'm Tom. I run Skillstown as a CEO, and Skillstown is focused on learning content providing. So we produce high quality e-learning that actually helps people achieve their goals. There's a lot of online learning available, but it doesn't really help you progress and deliver results. So that's what I'm learning from. I'm a didactics nerd from home, let's say, school, I mean, sorry, and a technology nerd from home because of my dad, and the rest of my family have been involved in technology for years.
Perfect. Tom, what I'm going to ask you to do as well, could you perhaps should we project your voice a little bit more into the room as well? Just a few people are not hearing everything come through, so please feel free to bring that to the fore. So Tom,
no
I'm just going to perhaps open this up actually. Tom, I wonder, can you take us for your own journey? You know, when did you discover that AI would be such a seismic shift in the training industry?
In the training industry, well, let me start with when I thought it would, my insight when it would impact the generic world, let's say, most, and that was when I saw the documentary of AlphaGo. You might have seen that documentary of the DeepMind, now part of Google AI, beat Lee Sedol, the world champion in Go. We saw him. We saw the same algorithm beat Kasparov, the chess player, obviously. But when I noticed, when I saw the documentary on him beating Lee Sedol, that really got me thinking, because there's so many scenarios in Go, and well, the algorithm actually figured out a whole new play, and in that way was able to beat Lee Sedol at it, and that was, to me, very impressive. When I thought, wow, this might impact our own world, let's say training and education, I think the first example was a study which was published in the US on grading essays. And that also was the first research which actually got me myself into interested in AI, because there was a research that showed a few researchers played around with natural language processing, which is one of the core capabilities of AI nowadays, and be able to predict the grades on essays of students. And that was fairly accurate, and obviously the impactful thing was that they had no clue what the content of that essay was all about. That really got me thinking, because when you can fairly accurately judge, let's say, grade a paper without knowing what the paper is actually about, or even reading a letter of what's in it, that might be quite disruptive in the world of training and education.
Okay.
That was just a part of grading.
Yeah, perfect there. My apologies, Tom. We're just having still a little bit of technical issues, obviously, with the sound quality. So if I could just ask you just to see if there's anything you can do your side, and anyone that isn't muted on the actual session, they can mute them as well. So just so we can improve the quality of the audio. Sorry, Tom, just interject there, but it's really important that we get this working for everybody today. So thank you so much for being muted.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Now I lost my voice of you, so let me just quickly fix it. I also hear you.
So while Tom's just looking at his audio, could I actually ask a question of everybody on here as well? Is that I've been on many sessions and many learnings around AI, but what tool sets are people currently using themselves? Because, you know, it's very common, everyone talks about chat GPT, but as we know, it covers the entire spectrum of business now, all the different AI tools. Perhaps just in the chat, it'd be interesting to see what AI tools people are actually currently using. I mean, I know some of my own family have been using other tools, you know, just to look at, should we say, creating imagery, but obviously it's about the skill of the prompting. But be interested to know what tools people are using, just so we can understand the audience, as they say. Good.
In the meanwhile, I think sound is much better now, right, Paul?
Yes, that's a vast improvement. Thank you so much. And there was even comments, could we use an AI filtering, obviously, for your mic? But that's a lot better, and we will work with what we've got today. So thank you, Tom.
Yeah. I'll quickly tell you in the meanwhile that you don't need to use an AI tool for that. There's already many integrated in Zoom and Teams, and it's all you're hearing is AI. That's not my voice at all.
And you are a real person today, yes? You're not an avatar.
Might be, no.
But yeah, and there's some interesting comments what people are actually using, and Midjourney, I'm familiar with that as well, and some of the other tools. So it's good to see that some people are using them. I've been on a couple of calls when people have been talking about it, but they've never actually used any of the AI tools. So it's good to see. Kevin obviously is, I say, more than a casual user. So Kevin Watson, good to see that as well in the comments. So back to you, Tom.
Cool. Yeah. So just as we prepared, Paul, I want to quickly ask everyone to answer me 2 questions, and I'll do one after another, so don't worry, so that I get a bit more sense on how you use AI or what the generic knowledge is, so that I know where to start in terms of the conversation. So, but first let me start by asking, and maybe you can do a raise of hands, or also if you want to share some content with your answer, please share that in the chat. But under reactions, you can raise your hand for those who don't know. So for a vote yes, who is here under the impression that the training, let's say training and education market in general will change entirely due to AI? I see a show of hands. Meaning it's going to be disrupted completely. That's a few, okay. Is anyone in the audience happy to elaborate on who said yes on why they said yes? And please unmute and elaborate.
So I believe Karen, Karen, if you want to come in.
Oh yeah.
Or is that just a general question? Karen Williamson.
It also be. So we're concluding that an amount of people thinks it's going to be completely disrupted, but are still a bit scared to elaborate on as to why. Yeah, if Karen is happy to answer, that's fine, and we could also proceed. So let me turn it to you and then ask, do you think, let's say, within the next 5 to 10 years, your job will be obsolete because of that? Your own job, your current work. Can I see a raise of hands who thinks I'll be useless in 10 years? Not me, but my job.
I believe that seems to be less.
Yes. Yes. That's always what I see happening. So yeah, that's also why I asked. Like, there's a big difference in these 2 questions. Usually, when I ask audiences, will it impact your market? The answer is usually yes. If it is, will it impact you? The answer is usually no, or let's say less yeses. And it might be due to protectionism, or like anyone not really realizing the impact yet. But yeah, you can be sure that it'll impact both work and your current job. in large extent. It might not mean your job goes obsolete. Might be that you adopt technology and therefore stay in the game. But yeah, there's going to be quite some disruption, I think. And well, the first thing I wanted to get into with you is the impact of AI in general. As you noticed, AI got into the media much more in the last, say, half year. That is because generative AI came into play. All of you might know that AI in general has been around for 10, 15 years already in large amounts. And I'm not kidding when I say that using Zoom, using Microsoft Teams, there's a lot of AI already being used. But I can tell you as well, if you pick up your phone right now and you take a picture, that picture is optimized by AI completely. So you don't see the picture you're actually taking. It's a changed perspective. Maybe slightly, maybe very much, but already everybody is very much using AI in their daily lives, and there's no way of getting around to it. The thing which really changed is the tipping to generative AI, let's say. So now AI is able to generate anything you please. And I'll give you an example to start off with of where we used AI before generative AI came into play, and what we're now doing after, to give you a bit of insight what we're working on. And as Paul mentioned, I'd be happy to respond to any objections, any questions which you have. I might not read up with the chat, so Paul, please also interrupt me if you see anything interesting in the chat on you to speak to. So that example I gave in the start of grading essays is the first like actual example in work I've been working on myself. So we saw this research in the US, and it was a really simple research where they analyzed texts of essays and then found an AI to grade it. So we rebuilt it, and we managed to get to a let's say half-point accurate grading of essays of students. And as I mentioned, I run Skillstown. It's part of one of the bigger educational conglomerates in Europe, Salta Group. And the advantage I got there is that I could just, let's say, pick up 20,000 essays of students which were ready graded, push them into an algorithm we built ourselves, and figure out can we predict the grades. The surprising thing here is that the most differentiating in terms of predicting the grade was not at all content related. All things were grammar, spelling, and let's say what they would call lexical diversity, so the amount of different words which were used, the length of alineas, the length of sentences, the structure of the words. Those were all great predictors of the grades. And I right away got into a dilemma because that worked really well for us. We built that algorithm. But then we figured, so if we release this and students will ask us, okay, so what's your feedback? Then our feedback would be, you have too many, your sentences are too long, for example. And you need to create more alineas, or you need to use more, let's say, complex words in your text, which makes no sense to a grader, obviously. So we got to a bit of a dilemma because our feedback would have been useless, but we were accurate in predicting the grades. And so we decided not even to launch it and use it as a quality measure. So that's where I see the first benefit for training agencies as well, is that we put in this type of analysis to figure out what quality are we delivering in terms of grading. So we used it as a second opinion on grading so that we could pick out grades which we predicted would be, let's say, 2 points lower than what the grade which was actually given. So identifying fraud in that sense by the grader or mistakes, or making sure that if the grader has a bad day, for example, we normalize that. So we give them a call and try to correct the given grades. So for us, that was a huge benefit because it pushes the quality.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I see general AI play a big role in enhancing the quality. Second example, which we actually did with, just saw Thijs in Lessen here, and which we collaborated on with a Newspring, is that we did some research on adaptive learning and the effectiveness of that. And one tricky thing with adaptive learning is that you need very, very, very fast amounts of content. So my team used to work on creating content extensively, and if you go into adaptive learning, you need 5 to 10 times more content so that you can filter. So let's say we did a course on spelling. So you take a test in the start, and that test identifies which learning outcomes in terms of spelling you're fairly well equipped, and the ones you need to be working on. And it removes all the content which is not relevant, things you're already skilled at, and it puts your attention to everything which is left over, which are your core skills to keep going.
Yeah.
Oh.
Tom, I have a question for you. What I also like, because of the target audience, so I see this as the stars in the sky. Okay. So, but basically, I've got this constellation, right? I've got Tom as the content.
Yes.
I've got this AI generative impacting content, and then I'm looking at it from like a delivery perspective as well. And what I'm trying to think about it as a training business, I have the influence of AI coming into my content, but I also have a platform that I use for my delivery. And we had a brilliant question come in actually yesterday, where I've got a training provider. They deliver a professional qualification, and they have their awarding body actually is now actually pushing them to say that they want an AI, an AI plagiarism checker on all assignments coming up basically now coming through. So they want to basically future-proof themselves. And I know that I've got Thijs, obviously from a New Spring on the call as well. Hi there, Thijs. Nice casual wave and nice shirt you got on again. But I'd be interested to perhaps get a balance between, say, like a platform provision in like a New Spring, as you mentioned, Thijs. I just wondered, you know, have you had these sort of questions come through yet about what AI tools we could use, obviously, for perhaps a plagiarism perspective? Because if the awarding bodies, associations are saying we need to start doing this or thinking about it, have you got any ideas or thoughts around that, Thijs?
Yes, and thanks for having me here and complimenting me on the shirt. Great webinar so far. I tried to make some contributions in the chat. Yeah, we've had this question multiple times. Just for a little bit of background, I work for a New Spring, which is a learning platform for training providers. That's the context in which we receive those questions. And of course, students learn inside our platform, and then there needs to be plagiarism, which is a very hard word to pronounce for a non-native, but plagiarism check. So what a New Spring does in that context is integrate with other systems who have this as a core business, because we feel that as a software builder, you should always focus on what you're good at, and you should integrate the parts that others are good at. And I know Proctorio is one of the systems that does this really well. Turnitin is another one that you could use. So yeah, the question turns up more and more and more. And we personally solve this through integrations. I'm also curious to hear how others do this and if other people have experience with this. But there are multiple platforms that have this already that are ready to use.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Paul, would you mind me speaking to that? Because
please.
So I understand the question here, and it makes a lot of sense, like to ask, like, so there's a big raise in AI awareness, let's say. So how do we adopt that? But yeah, I think I'd be happy if I could convince everyone here to first think of what the benefit of AI would then be. Because plagiarism checks are not terrible as they are at the moment. They're fairly accurate. And they actually need to step up their game and start using AI because the students are using AI to produce stuff. So they are trying to identify whether or not AI was used. And that is, I think, a much larger challenge. But yeah, I think most plagiarism checks you now could collaborate with are already using AI in some extent. But the reason I'm saying this is because I've been working on recommendations, for example, for quite a while, extensively doing research on what works with recommendations. And this is always one of the use cases for AI, right? It's where AI is used in Netflix. It's where AI is used in a lot of learning platforms. Up until today, I haven't found a way to get AI to produce better recommendations than manual labor.
Yeah.
The use case for AI in this is that you need to identify more results than you're capable of handling manually. So the efficiency argument is important here. And so thinking when anyone asks you, like, how do you use AI? And you will be asked that probably on a daily basis by now. First, go back to asking, so where would you see that benefit? Like, what is the actual reason you would want to use AI, so you can actually steer away from the hype a little bit and make sure that it's put to actual good use.
Yeah. Can I open perhaps another question over to everybody here as well? As we're all in business, and obviously the gives it away in the title really about impact for training businesses. Out of everybody sitting around here, perhaps what key thing do people see that will actually be an impact into their training business with AI? I just wonder if anyone's actually got a burning question that we could actually open up to everybody on the call, and if not, I will pick on someone. So please hurry up. So
I think Fabio earlier had his hand raised. Fabio,
okay.
did you? Is the moment gone, or do you still have your question? We'll wait for you to.
I have no question at this moment. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll wait.
Okay. So we do seem to be travelled, should we say, with some audio issues today. So all I'm going to do is just smile at adversity today. So, but has anyone else got any other sort of challenges they've come across recently, or not knowing what tools to use, or because the fact is it covers the spectrum, from text, image, voice, and video. Just wondered if anyone is actually looking at that, any challenges that they see currently at all. If not, we'll move on. But, well, I don't know if that was my joke, but anyway, that laughter coming through. But
that's from my side.
Okay, Carly, I'm going to pick on Carly. Carly, I appreciate where you said in the industries, but and perhaps uniquely placed as well. But perhaps have you had any experiences of where you're considering AI, where you sit within the industry, and perhaps you may give a bit of a clue, perhaps to give a bit of an overview to where you are and how you operate.
Yeah. So I suppose tools like OpenAI, I already use to help in storyboarding process, or for ideas. I was interested in hearing earlier on about the grade prediction. So my background previously was working at Imperial College Business School, where we did use Turnitin. And I think part of, I suppose, some of the concerns with AI also can be around the fairness and some of the bias that is in. Thinking about some of the training data that sometimes is used for the models.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I've seen quite a lot of posts, obviously, around the bias, the unconscious bias elements coming through as well. So that's quite an interesting point. So shall I pick on someone else? Let's think. Kevin Watson, would you like to You don't want to come on. You're not that shy, surely. But okay, we'll take it back though to
I'm not shy at all, but I'm not sure I can answer the question, to be honest. As you were asking it, I was thinking my biggest challenge at the moment with AI is the plethora of tools that are available.
Yeah.
And every day I'm seeing a new one. And which one do I hop onto? And are they all seeding into the same thing anyway? And therefore, is it just a marketing exercise by people trying to provide me with tools which are probably very similar or maybe not quite as good as the other one that I've had? So the challenge is sifting through the massive stuff that's out there in order to get stuff that's really useful.
Tom?
Yeah, that's definitely something I hear quite a lot from many people. Right? It's tricky to figure out where to start. Most of it is based on OpenAI. Obviously, Google will make a comeback. I promise you. They're well set to improve on that. But the way the development of the tools you'll see in terms of simplifying things. So OpenAI just exposed a model, and they give you all freedom to start to use it in any way you see fit. But the creativity and the exploration power of people, let's say, is limited to some extent. So what happens is a lot of vendors build small applications on top of it with a very specific use, which you could just prompt if you know what to do, but usually they build some layer on top of it. So for example, we built a smart assistant in our platform, Aria, who helps you learn throughout our platform in several ways. I'll get to that in a bit. But that's just like, that is our limit. That is, let's say, OpenAI or ChatGPT with a lot of limitations on top of that from us. So we try to narrow down the model, and that's mostly what it's done. Like the whole model can do anything, so you just need the one tool. But narrowing it down for yourself to make it useful, you'll see most tools come from that area probably, and you'll see a lot of aggregators come up with like ways to simplify again and filter, and you'll get pages where you can find, like, if you're trying to create imagery, you should pick one of these applications out of those lists. This will be stormy for, let's say, 2-3 years, I guess. This will be overflooded.
The one thing I find is listening to Kevin as well is the bit that we have to do as well. And the fact is that it's great that we have these AI tools, great, and there's a plethora of them, and it is like a needle in a haystack sometimes. And I find I just need to go off and shut myself off and go and actually use some of the tools. But I think the biggest thing, or the learning curve for me, is how to write good prompts.
Oh yeah,
I find that that's the thing. Yeah, Kevin, you want to come back?
Always helpful to get off mute, isn't it? I think prompt engineering clearly is a really big thing. I think the quality of prompt is always going to provide you with quality output. I think that's always thing. I think one of the things that I'm facing at the moment is GDPR and data protection, and wondering where the black hole is going, where it's all hidden, how it's being used. And therefore, when we start to, and the other thing, by the way, is connecting it all together and having workflow with API rather than just individual pockets over here and there and everywhere. So, and because you're using workflow, you are using data through those various points, and therefore the data protection and the GDPR comes up into it even more in our minds and in our customers' minds, I would think.
Thank you, Kevin. That's a really good point. Another thing I was thinking about as well is that inside of the programs, the learning element to it with the content is also then perhaps the dynamics of perhaps having a digital coach in there as well. And where do we see that going? Because if we're a coaching organization, leadership and management programs, when do we then start to see, or do we want to see, should we say, the avatar element of digital coaches embedded into the programs? And I think then that's when you start to get a little bit really deep perhaps into the whole GDPR and the application of it as well. But I think, it's how do we protect our assets from that as well, is quite an interesting point as well. I mean, and people on here, what sort of major sectors are we looking at? Are we coaches, leadership and management type of programs, construction industries? Be interested to perhaps understand that a little bit more of a dynamic, and do we see different influences coming from that as well? Because, you know, it's like when we had AR, VR land basically into our arena, there was this massive swell that we're seeing, but then what there was the point, it was great technology, but the application wasn't there. But what we're seeing differently now with AI is that it's so readily available that we don't need to purchase anything. Yes, we need to perhaps purchase some credits, because they normally give you 10 credits to go and be creative, then you have to pay for it. But I'm just really interested to sort of understand where people feel that they're going to go, when obviously with the creative industries and financial professional services, I imagine that's quite an interesting area. Wyn, could you perhaps bring that to life for us as well? Perhaps, you know, from the creative industries perspective, as well as financial services. Could you perhaps bring your life to the fore as well? Just explain a little bit more where you see AI coming in or not so much coming in.
Sure, Paul.
Yes.
So my role is, I'm very lucky because it's split across 2 different subsectors. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
So the professional financial services role covers law firms, audit and accounting firms, and insurance firms. And the creative industries is really sort of 20 subsectors, from fashion to film to writing. So it covers a number of topics that many speakers on this call have already covered. I see that's potentially the combination of things taking place. So AI and computer vision, that's the use of images, for example. So one of your respondents was talking about disabilities. I've been working with a company that's specifically working with deaf people in schools. So it's a vast topic, Paul. I don't know how to answer your question, but you know, if you had a precise surgical question you wanted to ask, then very happy to get involved.
One thing I do like, you know, you just sort of close it back round, obviously, with the disability element to it as well. I know we talk about conscious, unconscious bias, but also the disabilities. I would love to expand perhaps the time that we're available just a little bit around that. And Tom, just wondered if you could bring that to life for us, really.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so in that area, we also see like huge benefits already, since we offer quite a lot of content. And for example, in South Africa, we're very much involved in the deaf community as well. And in Europe, accessibility legislations are getting much more strict, which means for content production, it's quite some work to get things really accessible. And AI is simplifying that quite a lot, like creating, generating audio voiceovers. We also always used to do with voice actors. We're now moving towards full AI. Translations, same story, so making it accessible in dialects, not only generic language, for example. It's much easier and can be, now needs to be done beforehand, but we'll be able to do that on the fly soon, so that someone can just select like their own language, maybe dialect even, and listen in for people who have visible impression. And then obviously for the deaf people, it's much easier for us to generate sign language, for example, with videos, create subtitles, and revert that the other way around. So I think where the internet opened up availability of information, we're now getting a much more inclusive way of distributing content. That's, for us, that's a great benefit of AI at the moment already.
Mm-hmm. That sounds good. Yeah, Jan, I just realised my fellow co-host. Have you got any points you want to bring to the fore?
We're very quiet today, but everybody else is talking, so that's much better. Actually, there was a great point that Kevin made, which is actually Kevin and Tom in your interaction. On the one hand, there are so many tools coming to the market, and as Tom said, that might be for the next 2 to 3 years. Actually, that situation of new tools on the market, a lot of disruption, not knowing what to choose. I think that's part of that. That will continue for a while. However, can you afford then just to wait?
because that would be my natural response. Well, I'll wait for 2 or 3 years and then I'll see what kind of fizzled out, and I'll use that. I'll use the winners then. But even other people, Doug is on this call as well. Doug, you made the point a while ago, which was on social media. Can I wait a year even? I don't think you can, because then you'll be so far behind that the hill you have to climb is much, much bigger. So, and I don't know how people feel about this, but if there's a new technology or a new methodology, you need to play with it now, because then at least you know what it is. And then if it becomes relevant for you, then, or you can afford it, or you have the skills at that point to do something with it, then you can. Where if you wait, with this kind of adoption rate, 6 months, you'll hill to climb will be much higher. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
So
yeah, I agree completely, Jan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the impact is going to be really big if you don't create a generic understanding of the impact, let's say. So yeah, you saw the BuzzFeed, for example, the news media in the US go bankrupt quite quickly after the launch of AI, since they're into very generic news content. But it's also because of the hype. So first they lost traction because of the hype. And maybe if they would have survived, they would have stuck around for, let's say, a year more or so, because they would have survived the hype and then get into problems because they don't use AI to their benefit. So at least understanding where the impact is going to be in your business. And for example, we see it in role play extensively at the moment. We use AI for that quite a lot. There's enough research in psychiatry that shows that chat therapy, for example, is for many audiences much more effective than in person, since it creates a little bit of distance, so people tend to be more open, for example. So that'll also be the case for role play. Set aside the ability to repeat your role plays as many times as you want, whereas going to classroom training, the time is always limited. So experimenting with that now, I see that with classroom trainers in the Netherlands, where I'm from, some adopted it, some consider that their actors are much better. And I don't think it's a question whether or not they are better. I think it's a question about scale. And labor shortages are on an all-time high, and they won't go down anymore. So I think we need these solutions anyways.
So, I mean, I get your point about the actors and the scale and everything like that. And obviously, one of my elements to it as well is how much of this is actually going to impact the skills gap that we actually facing ourselves in our respective industries as well. Because what I'm seeing, talking to a number of organizations, is that, you know what, we haven't got enough instructors, we haven't got enough trainers. So will this help us, should we say, not productize our services, but will it help us optimize the market position that we see ourselves in? I mean, Tom, I'd be interested on your viewpoint on that as well.
Yeah, well, that's something a concept I addressed in my book before the launch of generative AI. So my opinion didn't change, but the magnitude of it did, let's say, because yeah, I would say I spoke to a university professor in economics, workplace economics, and he said to me, you need every inch of AI to be able to deal with labor shortages in the future, especially in education. Primary and secondary, obviously, at least in the Netherlands, is problematic. At such a level that his expectation is that in 2027, most kids will be able to go to school for, let's say, 3 days maximum because of the shortages. So if you can fill that gap with other much more personalized training than what we're currently offering in terms of e-learning, that would be not only beneficial, that would be quite a necessity. And I think the same thing would be for workplace learning, but there's not as big of a magnifying think less on that as I think primary, secondary.
So I'm going to ask you one question. So, Jan, obviously you'll come behind me. I'll take it in a second. But as a training business, and I think we've alluded to some of it as well, what one thing do you think I should start doing today that I haven't been doing yesterday?
So what I asked my own team was to come up with one task, and just one only, which you from today off on will not be doing yourself anymore, and hand it over to, let's say, ChatGPT, for example. Be mindful of your data. Then obviously there's great solutions of Microsoft and others which take care of your personal data. But asking that question to my team got a huge discussion going. And if you run a training agency, I would ask everyone involved in your company to do the same, so that they get challenged to try out which type of things you are done well by AI, for example. I can tell you that, anyone can tell you that, you can read it in the news, but I think it's more that you try yourself and challenge yourself, like what can I replace in terms of work. And role play is not a bad example. Writing storylines for courses is not a bad example. Those type of things, and maybe just pick that one thing you think it can't do, and then see if you can write a prompt so that it can. You'll be surprised by the benefits you'll get from that. Probably you'll be surprised by the negative of the impact.
Yeah. I had one quick example. Literally in the medical fraternity, they asked it to write a case note, basically. So it gave all the prescriptive information about a profile persona. 54-year-old, heavy, smoke 50 a day, blah blah blah. And then basically it was a problem-solving task for nurses to actually get down to the nuts and bolts of basically of the prescriptions, the medications. But the great thing, it gave the text script, but also gave a visual of the patient from the information that was put in the prompt. I think that's a great way to go. But we know that the AI journey has only really just started, and there's so much to talk about. And appreciate Tom is very much limited today, whether you're working as in leadership management, coaching business, whatever the skill sets are. It's such a big topic, and really you need to do that face to face rather than this because of the audio issues we've had today. So Jan, have we got a way around that?
Oh, you're smooth, Paul. Yes, of course we have a way around it. We're organizing a conference. Actually, the conference is How AI Impact Training Providers. It's the 5th of October, and it's in London. Here is a QR code. If you scan that, you'll go to the Eventbrite page and you'll actually see what it is about, who the speakers are, all the details, where it is, etc.